we made it. We made it to the end of the year of 2023. This will probably be my last video on this channel for this year. Don't worry, I'll be coming back in 2024. And to close off this year, I kind of wanted to do a little bit more of a personal video. I want to talk to you guys about going into the next year, and something for you guys to consider are what I call the 3 emotional journeys in jiu-jitsu. Now, the reason that I'm bringing them up right now at this time of a year is because I think this is a big motivation for how people approach their training in an upcoming year. You know, if you're located here in the United States where I am, everyone makes these New Year's resolutions and they start reevaluating kind of their life or their goals around this time. And if I look at myself and I wrote down each year that I've been training jiu-jitsu, I could tell you that my approach to that year had a direct correlation with which emotional journey I was in. I'm giving you guys this information because I want you to potentially stay on the mat for as long as possible. That's the whole reason why I started this YouTube channel, was to give students some wisdom from mistakes that I have made. Intelligence is you making the mistakes and learning from those mistakes and trying to avoid them and not making them again. Wisdom is learning from other people's mistakes. So you guys need to be wise and to try to prepare yourself for all the different things that could cause a derailment in your jiu-jitsu journey. Some of you are still going to be in the first phase that I'm about to talk about, where you think the thing that's going to make you better at jiu-jitsu, or that's going to keep you on the mat for as long as possible, is to learn all the moves and to drill a bunch and to roll harder and just to keep training. That's fine. That means you're not in the next phase yet, which is okay. For some of you other guys who like this kind of preparation and understanding the journey that's ahead of them, then this video is going to be for you. So to quote Benjamin Franklin, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So the first big emotion that I tell students that they go on is called the starry-eyed emotion. And the starry-eye emotion is, as it sounds, you're infatuated with everything about jiu-jitsu. You think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. You can't understand why not everyone trains jiu-jitsu, and you can't understand why so many people quit jiu-jitsu. Some advice that I would give you guys during this starry-eyed phase, which usually happens for, a lot of times it's a newer student, more or less, is to really enjoy this phase as much as possible because it quickly goes by. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you wanted to wish to become an adult. And then when you become an adult, you're like, man, I wish I could go back to being a kid. What I'd recommend doing is to try to take lots of photos, take lots of videos, record yourself sparring, document your journey, not even the moves or the techniques that you're learning, but just your experiences from night to night in jiu-jitsu. I don't have very many of those things during this time of my jiu-jitsu life. All I have are the memories, which they're great, but I wish I would have a little bit more documentation. And the biggest thing of preparation, or the biggest piece of advice I can give you guys when you're in the starry-eyed phase, is to expect that one day you're going to wake up and that enjoyment and fun is just going to be gone. That means that you've moved into the next emotional phase of what I call the annoyance and frustration phase. The reason why I'm telling you guys this is to prepare you and to tell you that it's normal when you feel like this. When you feel like all of a sudden the fun is gone and the enjoyment is gone, that's normal. When it happened to me, this happened to me around mid-blue belt and it lasted all the way to purple belt. And I remember when it kind of first started to happen, I felt like, man, does anyone else feel this? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just unique and I'm weird and maybe jiu-jitsu is not for me. And, you know, I kind of was like questioning if what I was feeling was correct. What's funny is that my advice to the starry-eyed people is to expect this, but a lot of times if you're in that phase, you don't think it's going to happen. But the problem is that you don't go from the starry-eyed phase or this new infatuation phase to the last phase of what I call acceptance. You're going to have to go through some shit in order to get to that acceptance. That's just what it is, and that's just life. There's a reason why they call it growing pains, because it's painful to grow. It's painful to go through. So you can't tell me, if you're the starry-eyed person, if you have any hopes of growth. If I was to ask you right now, do you want your jiu-jitsu to grow? That means growing pains are going to happen. What you're experiencing and what you're feeling in that moment is what hard feels like. I remember for me, I would show up to class and I was standing on the mat one time. I had 2 or 3 stripes on my blue belt and I was like, I don't want to be here. I'm going to have to go fight Dave tonight. I feel like my guard always sucks. I feel like this always happens. and I'm just not getting any better. He's like catching me. I'm supposed to know more than him. And it just made me be very frustrated. I think what helped me a lot to get over that though was that I was kind of in a teaching role, and I was having a responsibility of being there to help teach classes. So I had some extra help of accountability. That's actually why I actually have a coaching program online, because not only can I help you with like moves and techniques, but you can be held accountable. And sometimes that extra accountability is what is key for staying on the mat. That's what personally got me to black belt. If I wouldn't have had that extra accountability of being an instructor or helping teach class or having to be there in responsibility, almost like I was checking in with somebody, I don't know if I would have made it to black belt at that point or been able to overcome this frustrating and annoyance phase. After looking back on it, I was self-identifying my own personal life with jiu-jitsu. And I identified so heavily with my jiu-jitsu ability. If I had a white belt give me a hard time as a purple belt, or a blue belt tap me as a purple belt, not just this area of my game sucks, it was like, oh, Chase as a person sucks, or Chase is a whole jiu-jitsu sucks. And I was trying to find ways to like invalidate what I was doing. And it wasn't until I was able to separate those two, basically the failures had nothing to do with my personal identity or had nothing to even do with really my jiu-jitsu skill. It was just one area of my jiu-jitsu that I needed to improve. And that took me a long time to figure out. And so it wasn't until mid purple belt probably, or late purple belt, till I figured that out. And I want to be very clear, when you guys are in this frustration or annoyance phase, what happens is it's like peaks and valleys. You will come off the starry-eyed syndrome phase being on this like big high, have the most fun, have the most motivation you ever have in jiu-jitsu. Then you start to go all the way down into a ditch that's 10 feet deep. And then what starts to happen is that you dig yourself out of that ditch. But then as you dig yourself out, you might get out and you're going to be out of it for a little bit. Then you're going to fall into another ditch of annoyed and frustration, but it's only 8 feet. Then you dig yourself out and then you fall into another one and it's 6 feet. And you start to understand why these growing pains are happening and why this is occurring. And you get better at fixing it and you get better at going through it. That's what most of my advice is on this channel, is to help you guys dig out of that hole a lot sooner. But no one ever told me that that was normal, or like that was going to happen, or gave me strategies of how to dig myself out. I just kind of had to figure it out myself. And that standard advice of just keep showing up in training sometimes really sucks to hear. But I wish someone would have told me, hey, actually, Chase, what you're feeling is very good and very normal. That's actually a good sign. That means the growing pains are working. That means your jiu-jitsu is getting better. But here's what we can do to help kind of move past that a little bit faster. And then that brings us to the last phase of the acceptance phase. What I mean by acceptance is that you start to accept jiu-jitsu for what it is for you. Everyone gets something very, very different out of jiu-jitsu. But in the beginning, we try to box ourselves in about what we want to accomplish in jiu-jitsu as like a white belt, or in the starry-eyed phase, or whatever. And then as you go through this journey, you go through the starry-eyed phase, you go through the annoyance and frustration phase, and you're constantly digging yourself out of holes. When you come out the other side, your perspective a lot of times changes. The content may not have changed, but the context of how your brain views it does. Understanding that what you want out of jiu-jitsu can really only come when you've hit that acceptance phase. I truly believe no one can go from starry-eyed to acceptance without going through some shit. It has to happen. When I hit that acceptance phase, it also felt like all this weight just got kind of lifted off my shoulders. Once I was able to separate my identity from my basically jiu-jitsu skills, and I was able to understand why they were happening, then this stress kind of uplifted, and I actually started having a lot more fun again in my jiu-jitsu training. Jiu-jitsu became fun again. It wasn't that it wasn't fun even when I was annoyed and frustrated. It was like I had the drive and I had the desire to improve. It was just the process of doing so wasn't as enjoyable because I wasn't seeing the results I wanted to get. I wasn't happy with what was going on. A good exercise you could do now is get out a piece of paper and write down what you want out of jiu-jitsu now. But the thing that I ask you guys to do is to be open to change. Like I said, in 10 years from now, or until you've gone through that annoyed or frustration phase, it might change. But what you can start doing now is start thinking about it, start contemplating it. And then whenever you have that written down, whenever you're feeling annoyed or you're feeling frustrated, look at that list again and say, man, I'm doing this not because of all these superficial reasons over here, but because it's healthy, because it's a stress relief, and it's this. And it kind of recenters your alignment about why you even started training jiu-jitsu in the first place. One of my favorite questions to ask students is when I talk to them is once I feel like that they're a purple belt or a blue belt, for example, is I will say, what do you enjoy about jiu-jitsu? And I even challenge them a little bit more when they give me just a superficial answer. A lot of times people have never even thought about it. They just are kind of like me at that point where they were self-identifying. They're like, well, I can't be a quitter. I started something. I tell everybody about this. I don't want to quit. But they don't actually know what they really enjoy about jiu-jitsu. I would challenge you guys to think about that too this upcoming year, because these are the things that will keep you on the mat way longer than any arm lock you're ever going to learn, or any longer than any choke you're going to learn. So understand the 3 emotional journeys, understand which one you're in, to understand that it's normal, and to try to keep moving on until you reach that last one of acceptance. Jiu-jitsu is hard. Okay, there's a reason why not many people have a black belt. These are some of the things that really make it even harder. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for sticking around if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.